We know it is coming undone. Grindelwald. The past whispers to you.
Albus Dumbledore.
This is the team that's going to take down the most dangerous wizard in over a century.
Are you kidding me right now?
Who wouldn't like our chances? Wizard descended from a very old family, a school teacher.
Begins today! Things are not quite what they appear. Now you're sibling.
What if Dumbledore's biggest secret could change the fate of the entire wizarding world? Join us as we uncover the biggest facts, hidden details, and twists from Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore 2022. Watch Reviews Wala for the full movie review, magical facts, and everything you might have missed. No, Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore is a 2022 fantasy movie directed by David Yates. The screenplay was written by J.K. Rowling and Steve Kloves, based on characters created by Rowling. It is the sequel to Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald from 2018. The movie is also the third and final installment in the Fantastic Beasts movie series and the 11th movie overall in the Wizarding World franchise. The movie has a huge cast including Eddie Redmayne, Jude Law, Ezra Miller, Dan Fogler, Alison Sudol, Callum Turner, Jessica Williams, Catherine Waterston, and Mads Mikkelsen. The story takes place 5 years after the events of the Crimes of Grindelwald. This time, Albus Dumbledore knows he can't stop the powerful dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald by himself. Since Dumbledore can't directly fight Grindelwald because of their complicated magical connection, he puts his trust in Newt Scamander and a group of his friends and allies. Dumbledore gives Newt and the others a dangerous mission. Their job is to go up against Grindelwald and his growing army, while trying to stop him from gaining control over the wizarding world. As the mission moves forward, the group gets pulled into a much bigger fight involving powerful magic, secrets from the past, political pressure, and dangerous creatures. Newt, Dumbledore, and their allies have to work together if they want to stop Grindelwald before it's too late. The movie was originally planned to come out in November 2021, but the release was pushed back to April 2022 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the main cast from the first two movies confirmed that they would return in March 2020. Production was originally expected to begin in early 2020, but filming was delayed because of the pandemic. After the delay, production finally started in September 2020. There was also a major change in the cast during production. Johnny Depp, who had played Grindelwald in the previous movies, originally returned for this film and even filmed one scene. However, in November 2020, Depp was asked to leave the role following the verdict in his court case against News Group newspapers. Later that same month, Mads Mikkelsen was announced as his replacement and took over the role of Grindelwald. Filming for the movie was finally completed in February 2021. Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore had its world premiere at the Royal Festival Hall in London on March 29, 2022. The movie was then released internationally on April 14, 2022. followed by its release in the United States on April 15, 2022. The film was released by Warner Brothers Pictures. When the movie came out, critics gave it mixed reviews. Some people liked the performances, magical world, visuals, and character moments, while others felt the story was too complicated and packed with too many plot lines. At the box office, the movie earned more than $407 million worldwide. Even though it made hundreds of millions of dollars, it became the lowest grossing movie in the entire Wizarding World franchise at the time. Overall, Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore continues the story of Newt Scamander, Dumbledore, and their fight against Grindelwald. With powerful magic, dangerous creatures, old secrets, and a battle for the future of the Wizarding world, the movie brings the Fantastic Beasts story to its final chapter. Albus Dumbledore, Jude Law, is one of the most powerful and respected wizards in the British Wizarding world. He is famous for his intelligence, magical skills, and his time as a defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Dumbledore has a complicated history with Gellert Grindelwald, Mads Mikkelsen. When they were young, the two were extremely close and were even in love. However, they eventually went their separate ways. They also created a blood pact that prevents them from fighting each other directly. Dumbledore and Grindelwald briefly meet inside a small muggle tea shop. During their meeting, they admit that they still have feelings for each other. Grindelwald says that he plans to destroy the muggle world and create a new order where wizards are in control. Dumbledore strongly rejects the idea, calling it completely insane. He admits that he once believed in Grindelwald's plan, but says that back then he was young, foolish, and didn't understand the consequences. Meanwhile, in Quilin, China, in 1932, Newt Scamander, Eddie Redmayne, is helping a magical creature called a Qilin give birth. Newt works for the British Ministry of Magic in the Beast Division of the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. He is also a self-proclaimed magizoologist, meaning he studies and cares for magical creatures. Newt became well known after helping deal with the dangerous events that happened in New York City in December 1926, when Grindelwald caused major trouble. Because of his past and his unusual personality, Newt isn't always accepted by everyone in the British wizarding community. Still, he has become a trusted friend and ally of Dumbledore. The Quilin is a very special magical creature. It has the ability to see into a person's soul and can even see things connected to the future. Because of this powerful ability, the creature is extremely valuable to Grindelwald. While Newt is helping the Quilin give birth, Grindelwald's followers suddenly arrive. They are led by Credence Barebone, Ezra Miller, who was once a troubled and abused young man raised by Mary Lou Barebone. Credence had suffered terrible treatment while growing up, and his anger eventually caused him to unleash his Obscurus during the events in New York in 1926. The Obscurus caused massive destruction across the city. Credence survived because a tiny piece of the Obscurus remained inside him. Grindelwald eventually found him and took advantage of his pain and anger. Credence originally believed that he was actually Corvus Lestrange, the dead half-brother of Leta Lestrange. Now, he has become one of Grindelwald's strongest followers. Credence and the other followers attack Newt and the Qilin. They kill the mother Qilin and steal her newborn baby. Grindelwald later kills the creature because he wants to use its special ability to see the future and manipulate the wizarding world's political system. But Grindelwald and his followers don't realize something important. The Qilin actually had twins. The younger twin survived and Newt managed to save it. This secret becomes extremely important later in the story. Credence is also supported by Queenie Goldstein, Alison Sudol, who has joined Grindelwald's side. Queenie is deeply in love with Jacob Kowalski, a muggle who loves her too. She originally joined Grindelwald because he promised that she would finally be able to marry Jacob, something Jacob had previously refused to do because he was afraid of the consequences of their relationship. Queenie also knows a major secret about Credence. She tells him that he is actually a member of the Dumbledore family and that his family abandoned him. Grindelwald uses this information to make Credence feel even more connected to him. Since Grindelwald claims that he was also rejected and abandoned, Credence begins to see him as someone who understands his pain. Meanwhile, Aberforth Dumbledore, Richard Coyle, is introduced as Albus Dumbledore's younger brother. He owns the Hog's Head Inn and has a complicated relationship with Albus. Aberforth is also revealed to be Credence's biological father because Dumbledore cannot fight Grindelwald directly due to their blood pact. He decides to build a team that can take on Grindelwald instead. Dumbledore gathers several trusted people and brings them together at Aberforth's Inn to create a plan. Dumbledore recruits Newt Scamander, Newt's older brother Theseus Scamander, Callum Turner, Lally Hicks, Jessica Williams, Yusuf Kama, William Nadilam, Jacob Kowalski, Dan Fogler, and Newt's assistant Bunty Broadacre, Victoria Yates. Theseus is Newt's older brother and a highly respected Auror who works for the British Ministry of Magic. He is known for being brave and loyal and has even been called a war hero because of his actions during the First World War. Theseus often tries to push Newt to behave in a more normal and respectable way so that people in Wizarding Society will accept him more easily. Theseus had also lost someone very important to him. His former fiancée, Leta Lestrange, died in September 1927 after sacrificing herself during Grindelwald's rally in Paris. She gave her life to save the Scamander brothers. Lally Hicks is a respected charms teacher at America's Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She is intelligent, confident, and highly skilled with magic. Yusuf Kama is a French wizard of Senegalese descent who comes from an old wizarding family. He is an ally of Newt, although he once tried to kill Credence because he believed Credence was actually Corvus Lestrange V, the son of Yusuf's former stepfather. Then there's Jacob Kowalski, an American nomad and First World War veteran who owns a bakery in New York. Jacob is one of Newt's closest friends and is deeply in love with Queenie. Even though he is a muggle, Jacob becomes an important part of Dumbledore's team. Eventually, he and Queenie will get back together and marry, with Newt serving as Jacob's best man. The group travels to Berlin, Germany, where Yusuf is secretly placed inside Grindelwald's organization as a spy. However, Grindelwald doesn't trust people easily. He orders Queenie to use her powerful legilimency abilities to examine Yusuf's mind and determine whether he can really be trusted. Queenie is naturally gifted at legilimency, which allows her to read people's thoughts and feelings. She is Tina Goldstein's younger sister and previously worked alongside Tina at the Magical Congress of the United States of America, also known as Mackey USA. Meanwhile, the International Confederation of Wizards, or ICW, is preparing to choose a new Supreme Mugwump. The leader of the organization, Dumbledore, tries to convince the current Supreme Mugwump, Anton Vogel Oliver Masucci, to stop Grindelwald from running for the position. Dumbledore had even sent Newt to deliver a message to Vogel, telling him to do what is right instead of simply doing what is easy. However, Vogel is retiring from his position and he decides not to block Grindelwald's candidacy. The next leader will be chosen through a special ritual involving the Killin, the magical creature that can recognize a person's true character. Grindelwald has already been working behind the scenes to gain control. His followers have weakened the German Ministry of Magic, and they managed to arrest Theseus Scamander. At the same time, Grindelwald's followers plan to assassinate Vicencia Santos, Maria Fernanda Candido, the Brazilian candidate for Supreme Mugwump. Newt and his team try to find Theseus, but they can't figure out where he is being held. Dumbledore eventually sends Newt to a secret German wizard prison called the Erkstag, where Theseus is being kept. While Newt is searching for Theseus, Lally and Jacob attend an official ministry dinner where Grindelwald's candidacy is accepted. Lally and Jacob secretly work to stop the planned assassination of Vicencia Santos. They manage to prevent the attack and escape from the dinner, but Grindelwald quickly turns the situation in his favor. Jacob is framed for trying to assassinate Grindelwald. Grindelwald uses the fake attack to make himself look like a victim. He claims that muggles are dangerous and that wizards need to protect themselves by taking control. His popularity among wizards suddenly grows, giving him even more political power. At the same time, Credence confronts Albus Dumbledore. Even though Credence is powerful, Dumbledore quickly defeats him. During this confrontation, Credence discovers the truth about his family. He learns that Aberforth Dumbledore is his biological father, meaning Albus Dumbledore is actually his uncle. This revelation makes Credence question everything he has been told by Grindelwald. For the first time, he begins to doubt whether Grindelwald really cares about him or has simply been using him. Elsewhere, Newt finally reaches the Arkstag and finds Theseus. The two brothers manage to escape from the dangerous prison. They then use a portkey to travel to Hogwarts soon. The wizarding world's most powerful leaders gather in Bhutan for the Walk of the Killin, an ancient ceremony used to select the next supreme mugwump. Grindelwald knows that Dumbledore and Newt have a surviving Killin. He believes they will secretly bring it to the ceremony inside a suitcase. To protect the creature and confuse Grindelwald's followers, Dumbledore's team comes up with a clever plan. Each member of the group carries an identical suitcase, making it almost impossible for Grindelwald's followers to know which suitcase contains the real Killin. As the group makes its way through the village, Queenie finally turns against Grindelwald. She realizes that she has been manipulated and decides to return to Jacob. The two reunite after everything they have been through at the ceremony. Grindelwald takes things to an even darker level. Using dark magic and necromancy, he brings the dead Killin back to life. He then magically controls the creature and forces it to choose him during the Supreme Mugwump ceremony. The crowd believes the Killin has chosen Grindelwald because he is worthy of becoming their leader. Grindelwald immediately uses the moment to announce his plans. He declares war against Muggles and claims that wizards must take control of the world. He also tortures Jacob to prove how powerful and dangerous he can be. But Grindelwald's plan starts falling apart when Credence, Newt, and Bunty expose the truth. Bunty reveals that she has the real suitcase. While Grindelwald's followers were chasing the other members of Dumbledore's team around the village, Bunty secretly kept the suitcase containing the surviving Keelan safe. She opens the suitcase and reveals the real creature. The Keelan looks around at everyone before walking toward Albus Dumbledore. It then bows to him, showing that it recognizes him as a truly worthy and honorable person. Dumbledore, however, does not want the position. He refuses to become Supreme Mugwump. The Keelan then chooses Vicentia Santos instead, making her the new Supreme Mugwump. Grindelwald becomes furious. He realizes that his entire plan has failed. In a final attempt to get revenge, Grindelwald points his wand at Credence and casts the killing curse. But Credence is not alone. His father, Aberforth, protects him. At the same time, Albus also steps in to defend his nephew. Dumbledore and Grindelwald finally face each other. Because they created the Blood Pact years earlier, neither of them was supposed to be able to attack the other. But when their magical attacks collide, something unexpected happens. Their spells break the Blood Pact. For the first time in many years, Dumbledore and Grindelwald are finally free to fight each other. The two powerful wizards engage in an intense magical duel. Neither one is able to gain a clear advantage, and the battle eventually ends in a stalemate. Realizing that he has lost control of the situation, Grindelwald disappears using magic and escapes. After the battle, Credence is extremely weak and sick. Aberforth finally accepts him as his son and takes him home. After everything that happened, Credence is finally given a chance to be with his real family. Meanwhile, back in New York City, Jacob and Queenie finally get their happy ending. The two of them get married inside Jacob's bakery. Many of their friends attend the wedding, including Newt and Tina Goldstein, Queenie's sister. As the celebration continues, Newt notices someone standing across the street. It is Dumbledore. Dumbledore watches the wedding from a distance. Newt approaches him, and the two share a quiet moment. Dumbledore thanks Newt for everything he has done. Then, without saying much more, Dumbledore walks away and disappears into the night. With Grindelwald defeated and the wizarding world given a new leader, Newt and his friends can finally look toward a more peaceful future. Casting Eddie Redmayne's return as Newt Scamander anchored the entire ensemble of Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore. By 2022, the actor had already inhabited the Magizoologist across two previous films, refining a performance built on quiet eccentricity, physical awkwardness, and an almost childlike devotion to magical creatures. Redmayne born Edward John David Redmayne in London on the 6th of January 1982, brought to the role a resume that included an Academy Award for his portrayal of Stephen Hawking in The Theory of Everything and a nomination for The Danish Girl. Producers David Heyman and J.K. Rowling had identified him early as their first and only choice for Newt, citing his ability to appear simultaneously period correct for the 1920s 1930s setting and emotionally transparent. Redmayne himself selected Newt's simple, organic looking wand from multiple design options, later explaining that the prop's understated quality matched the character's preference for substance over spectacle. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the actor continued to emphasize Newt's reluctance to engage in large scale political conflict, allowing the character's loyalty to Dumbledore and to his creatures to drive the action rather than any personal hunger for heroism. The performance retained the distinctive posture, slightly hunched, hands often buried in pockets or gesturing midair as if still communicating with beasts, that had become a signature since the first film. Redmayne's prior stage work, including a Tony winning turn in Red and a celebrated Richard II, informed the controlled physicality he applied to Newt's more acrobatic sequences involving the Manticore and the Quillin. His presence provided continuity for the franchise while giving newer cast members a stable emotional center around which to orient their own performances. Jude Law's Albus Dumbledore occupied the narrative and thematic core of the film. Law had first assumed the role in The Crimes of Grindelwald after actively inquiring about the character following the release of the original Fantastic Beasts. The casting announcement in 2017 positioned him as a younger iteration of the wizard previously embodied by Richard Harris and Michael Gambon. Yet Law and director David Yates deliberately avoided imitation. Instead, they constructed a Dumbledore defined by restrained power, intellectual mischief, and unresolved personal history. Law's preparation included an extended conversation with Rowling in which she outlined the character's emotional trajectory, particularly the blood pact that still bound him to Grindelwald and the family secrets that continued to surface. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the actor's performance leaned more heavily into strategic calculation and quiet vulnerability. Scenes opposite Mads Mikkelsen's Grindelwald allowed Law to explore the lingering intimacy and mutual recognition between the two former allies. His Dumbledore rarely raised his voice. Authority resided in precise diction, measured pauses, and the occasional flash of dry humor. Law's earlier filmography. The talented Mr. Ripley, Cold Mountain, Sherlock Holmes had already demonstrated his capacity for charismatic intelligence and moral ambiguity, qualities that translated directly into the younger Dumbledore's blend of idealism and pragmatism. On set, he worked closely with Eddie Redmayne to establish the mentor protege dynamic that underpins much of the film's interpersonal architecture. The result was a Dumbledore who felt simultaneously continuous with the later Hogwarts headmaster and distinctly of his own era. Mads Mikkelsen's assumption of Gellert Grindelwald represented the most significant casting shift of the production. Johnny Depp had originated the role in The Crimes of Grindelwald, but exited the franchise after a high profile libel case. Warner Bros. Moved quickly to recast, confirming Mikkelsen in November 2020, while principal photography was already underway. The Danish actor approached the character with deliberate distance from Depp's interpretation. In interviews, he described any attempt to copy the previous portrayal as creative suicide, opting instead for a more restrained human scale menace. Mikkelsen's Grindelwald retained the distinctive heterochromia and pale hair, but dialed both elements back, favoring tailored elegance over theatrical flamboyance. His performance emphasized political charisma and ideological conviction rather than pure theatricality. Scenes of public oratory and private negotiation showcased the actor's ability to project quiet authority and seductive reason. Mikkelsen's prior work as Hannibal Lecter, LeChiffre in Casino Royale, and Caecilius in Doctor Strange had already established him as a specialist in intelligent antagonists. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, he leveraged that experience to portray Grindelwald as a visionary whose rhetoric could persuade both pureblood supremacists and disillusioned idealists. The recasting required careful continuity management. The production retained certain visual motifs while allowing Mickelson's physicality and vocal cadence to redefine the character's screen presence. The actor's collaboration with Jude Law produced some of the film's most charged exchanges, grounded in mutual history rather than simple opposition. Ezra Miller continued as Credence Barebone, the obscurial whose identity crisis had driven much of the previous installment. By the third film, Credence's storyline had shifted from pure victimhood toward reluctant agency under Grindelwald's influence and eventual confrontation with the truth of his parentage. Miller's performance retained the character's fractured physicality, shoulders drawn inward, gaze often averted, sudden eruptions of destructive magic while adding layers of dawning self awareness. The actor had first learned of Credence's connection to the Dumbledore family years earlier, initially misunderstanding the revelation as an indication that he was playing a younger Aberforth. Rowling corrected the misunderstanding, clarifying that Credence was Aurelius, a previously unknown relative. Miller's preparation drew on personal experiences of social alienation and on extensive research into the psychological effects of prolonged abuse and identity suppression. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the character's arc moved through loyalty to Grindelwald, a pivotal duel with Albus, and the eventual revelation that he was Aberforth's son rather than Albus's brother. Miller's intensity provided a counterpoint to the more measured styles of Redmayne and Law, keeping the emotional stakes high even in quieter scenes. The actor's commitment to the role remained absolute across three films despite external controversies surrounding his personal life during the later production period. Dan Fogler's Jacob Kowalski supplied the film's primary non-magical perspective and much of its emotional warmth. Fogler had originated the role of the No-Maj Baker in the first film and returned for both sequels, evolving Jacob from comic relief and audience surrogate into a fully integrated member of Dumbledore's circle. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, Jacob's relationship with Queenie Goldstein remained strained by her earlier allegiance to Grindelwald, giving Fogler opportunities to explore quiet heartbreak alongside the character's customary optimism. The actor's background in stand-up comedy and character-driven independent films informed Jacob's timing and physical expressiveness. Fogler's performance grounded the more fantastical elements, particularly in sequences involving the Keelin and the election in Bhutan, where Jacob's outsider status allowed him to witness events with unfiltered humanity. His chemistry with Alison Sudol's Queenie continued to function as one of the franchise's most reliable emotional anchors. Alison Sudol reprised Queenie Goldstein, the Legilimens, whose decision to join Grindelwald in the previous film had fractured her relationship with Jacob and strained her bond with Sister Tina. Sudol's portrayal balanced Queenie's innate kindness with the moral complexity of her choices. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the character's arc centered on gradual disillusionment with Grindelwald's ideology and a tentative path toward redemption. Sudol, a singer-songwriter as well as an actress, brought a lyrical quality to Queenie's dialogue and a visible internal conflict that registered even in scenes of relative stillness. Her earlier work in the first two films had established Queenie as both a source of warmth and a reminder of the personal costs of the wizarding world's political divisions. The third film allowed those tensions to resolve without erasing the damage already done. Colum Turner returned as Theseus Scamander, Newt's older brother and a senior auror within the British Ministry of Magic. Turner's Theseus functioned as a more conventional heroic figure, competent, duty-bound, occasionally frustrated by Newt's unorthodox methods, while still revealing vulnerability after the death of Leta Lestrange. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the character's imprisonment by Grindelwald's forces and subsequent rescue provided Turner with material that moved beyond the competent older sibling archetype. His performance maintained the physical confidence and clipped authority that had defined Theseus since the crimes of Grindelwald, while allowing space for fraternal reconciliation and shared purpose with Newt. Jessica Williams expanded her role as Eulalie Lally Hicks from a brief cameo in The Crimes of Grindelwald into a central member of Dumbledore's team. Williams, previously known for her work as a correspondent on The Daily Show, approached the character with deliberate attention to historical and cultural specificity. She developed a backstory in collaboration with the production. Lally, born in Harlem to a nomad family, discovering latent magical ability through her grandmother's stories of African ancestral magic, and later corresponding with Dumbledore while studying at Ilvermorny. Williams worked extensively with a dialect coach, drawing vocal inspiration from Hazel Scott and James Baldwin to create a mid Atlantic cadence that suggested both formal education and cultural rootedness. She modeled Lally's wand work on the powerful, purposeful physicality of tennis players Venus and Serena Williams. In the film, Lally's expertise in defensive magic and her ability to read character made her indispensable to the mission. Williams's performance combined intellectual sharpness with genuine warmth, particularly in her interactions with Jacob, whom she recruits into the group. The expansion of the role from photograph to full supporting character marked one of the production's clearest investments in new faces. Catherine Waterston's Porpentina, Tina Goldstein appeared in a reduced capacity compared with the first two films. Waterston had established Tina as a determined Auror and Newt's primary romantic interest. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the character's screen time was limited, reflecting narrative focus on Dumbledore's circle and the European political landscape. Waterston's performances retained Tina's professional competence and quiet intensity even within the smaller role, providing continuity for viewers invested in the new Tina relationship. Richard Coyle joined the cast as Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's younger brother and proprietor of the Hog's Head. Coyle's Aberforth supplied a gruffer, more pragmatic counterpoint to Law's cerebral Albus. The actor's prior work in television and film, including Coupling and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, informed a performance that balanced familiar resentment with reluctant cooperation. Scenes between the brothers revealed long standing tensions while advancing the plot surrounding Credence's true parentage. Coyle's physical presence and measured delivery grounded the more mystical elements of the Dumbledore family history. Oliver Masucci portrayed Anton Vogel, the German Minister for Magic, whose political maneuvering facilitated Grindelwald's rise. Masucci, known internationally for his role in the series Dark, brought a bureaucratic coldness and opportunistic calculation to the character. His Vogel represented the institutional willingness to accommodate extremism when it served personal or national interest. The performance avoided caricature, presenting instead a recognizable type of political operator. Maria Fernanda Candido appeared as Vicencia Santos, the Brazilian candidate for Supreme Mugwump, whose campaign against Grindelwald provided a democratic counterweight. Candido's performance conveyed quiet resolve and principled opposition. Dave Wong played Liu Tao, another candidate in the election, adding further international texture to the political sequences. Victoria Yates continued as Bunty Broadacre, Newt's loyal assistant at the ministry. Yates' Bunty combined professional efficiency with unspoken personal affection for Newt. In The Secrets of Dumbledore, the character's expanded involvement in the mission allowed Yates to move beyond background support into active participation. Poppy Corby-Tuech returned as Vinda Rosier, Grindelwald's devoted lieutenant, maintaining the cool aristocratic menace established in the previous film. Fiona Glascott appeared as a younger Minerva McGonagall, linking the prequel timeline to the later Hogwarts faculty. Glascott's brief but precise performance suggested the future professor's characteristic severity and competence. Supporting players filled out the ministries, horror teams, and crowd scenes. Alexander Kuznetsov as Helmut, Valerie Packner as Henrietta Fisher, Ramona Kunze Libnow as Edith, Lucas Englander as Horst, and numerous uncredited performers as ministry officials, villagers, and magical functionaries. The casting process overall reflected both continuity and calculated disruption. Returning actors such as Redmayne, Law, Fogler, Sudol, Turner, Waterston, Yates, and Corby-Tuech provided franchise recognition and emotional through lines. The recasting of Grindelwald with Mikkelsen addressed external circumstances while allowing a tonal recalibration of the antagonist. New or expanded roles for Williams, Coyle, Masucci, and Candido introduced fresh dynamics and international perspectives. Casting director Fiona Ware assembled an ensemble capable of balancing intimate character work with large scale set pieces. The result was a company of actors whose collective presence sustained the film's exploration of loyalty, ideology, and personal history within the broader wizarding conflict. Each performer contributed a distinct texture. Redmayne's gentle focus, Law's measured authority, Mickelson's charismatic menace, Miller's fractured intensity, Fogler's warmth, Williams's intellectual energy, creating a mosaic that mirrored the narrative's emphasis on unlikely alliances against a common threat, production development, and pre production Warner Brothers. First framed the Fantastic Beasts franchise as an open ended project rather than a fixed trilogy. Back in October 2014, the studio described the series as being at least three films, with an initial plan to release the third entry in November 2020. That early timeline shifted considerably over the following years. As the scope of the story grew, by mid 2016, director David Yates confirmed that J.K. Rowling already had ideas mapped out for what would eventually become the third film's screenplay, signaling that the creative team was thinking several installments ahead even before the first film had been released. A few months later, in October 2016, the plan changed dramatically. Warner Brothers announced that the saga would actually span five films rather than three. Eddie Redmayne was confirmed to anchor all five as Newt Scamander, with the producing team of Rowling, David Heyman, Steve Kloves, and Lionel Wigram staying on board throughout. Yates likewise committed to directing every installment, remarking around that time that he loved making the films and had built a team that felt like an extended family. Casting speculation swirled around the villain role in the years that followed. In October 2018, Johnny Depp, who had played Dark Wizard Gellert Grindelwald in the first two films, suggested he might return for the third installment, which at that point was expected to begin shooting sometime in mid 2019. The film's setting and scope were clarified in February 2019, when it was revealed the story would unfold during the 1930s, building toward the wizarding world's entanglement with the earliest currents of the Second World War. The narrative would expand its geography significantly, taking audiences into magical communities in Bhutan, Germany, and China, alongside the already established backdrops of Britain and the United States. Later that year, in November 2019, Warner Bros. Issued a press release confirming that Brazil would also serve as a location, that principal photography was targeted for spring 2020, and that Steve Kloves, the screenwriter behind the Harry Potter film adaptations, had joined the project as co-writer alongside Rowling. This marked Kloves' first screenwriting credit within the Fantastic Beasts series, specifically bringing his experience from the earlier Wizarding World films directly into scripting duties. By March 2020, the returning ensemble was locked into place. Jude Law, Johnny Depp, Ezra Miller, Alison Sudol, Dan Fogler, Callum Turner, Catherine Waterston, Claudia Kim, and Jessica Williams were all confirmed to be reprising their roles from the earlier films, joining Redmayne as the returning core cast. Not every previously established actor made the cut, however. Kevin Guthrie, who had played the recurring character Abernathy in the first two films, was originally set to return but was dropped from the project before filming began after being tried and ultimately convicted in a sexual assault case. The most significant behind the scenes disruption to the production involved the recasting of Grindelwald himself. In November 2020, Johnny Depp announced that he would not be reprising the role after Warner Brothers asked him to step aside in the wake of negative publicity stemming from his libel case against Newsgroup newspapers. Depp had actually already begun his work on the film by that point. Production had resumed in September 2020, and he shot three scenes in London before the decision was made. Under the terms of his contract, he was entitled to payment, regardless of whether the finished film ultimately used his performance, with reports placing his salary somewhere in the range of $10 million to $16 million. On November 25, 2020, Warner Brothers confirmed that Mads Mikkelsen would step into the role in Depp's place. Mikkelsen approached the recast with deliberate caution about not simply copying his predecessor. In later interviews, He explained that trying to replicate Depp's performance would have amounted to creative suicide, even while acknowledging that some connective tissue was still needed so that audiences could recognize continuity between the portrayals across the trilogy. Notably, the finished film never directly explains or acknowledges Grindelwald's changed appearance between the second and third installments, a choice Michelson himself later described as intentional rather than an oversight. Filming principal photography for the third Fantastic Beasts film had originally been slated to start in early 2020, but the onset of the COVID 19 pandemic forced Warner Brothers to postpone the shoot indefinitely in March of that year. Production eventually got underway in September 2020, officially commencing in London under strict health and safety protocols designed to protect cast and crew from the virus during an active pandemic. The shoot was not free of further pandemic related interruptions. On February 3, 2021, filming at Warner Bros. Studios, Leavesden, the production's main UK base, was temporarily halted after a crew member tested positive for COVID 19. Despite this setback, the production recovered relatively quickly. Later that same month, composer James Newton Howard confirmed that filming had wrapped entirely, bringing the shoot to a close roughly 5 months after it had begun. Although the story's narrative sends its characters to Berlin and Bhutan, none of the production actually traveled to film on location in either place. Instead, both settings were built and reimagined on the expansive backlot and sound stages at Warner Bros. Studios, Leavesden, with the illusion of these distant, exotic locales achieved through extensive visual effects work overseen by production, VFX supervisor Christian Mans, production once, photography wrapped, the film moved into post production, where the visual effects team's work became especially central, given how much of the film's Berlin and Bhutan settings existed only as digitally enhanced studio sets rather than practical locations. The scale of this VFX effort extended to newer production techniques as well, including the use of virtual reality tools during the post production process to help the filmmaking team visualize and refine digitally constructed environments before final effects were locked in. Music James Newton Howard returned to compose the score for the third Fantastic Beasts film, continuing a role he had held since the very first entry in the spin off series. Howard had previously composed the scores for both Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, giving him a well established musical through line across the franchise by the time he began work on The Secrets of Dumbledore. For the third film, Howard once again wove John Williams' iconic musical themes from the original Harry Potter film series into his own score, tying the newer trilogy back to the broader Wizarding World franchise's musical identity and giving longtime fans an audible connection between the two series. Release marketing. The promotional campaign for the film began in earnest in September 2021, the same day that Warner Bros. Formally announced the film's title as Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. In the months that followed, the studio rolled out a fairly conventional but extensive marketing rhythm. On December 10, 2021, Warner Bros. Released a sizzle reel promotional video to mark the 20th anniversary of the Wizarding World franchise as a whole. The reel combined clips and footage from across the franchise's history and closed with a brief teaser for the new film, while also announcing that a full trailer would follow just a few days later. That trailer arrived as promised on December 13, 2021, followed shortly afterward by a teaser poster. Marketing activity picked up again in February 2022 as the release date approached. On February 22, 18 character focused posters were released online, giving fans individual looks at the film's principal cast members. A second trailer was originally announced for release on February 24 via a social media post from actor Jude Law, but that rollout was delayed. The trailer eventually arrived on February 28, 2022, accompanied by the film's official theatrical poster. Separately, a hardcover edition of the official screenplay was scheduled for publication on July 19, 2022, arriving roughly 3 months after the film's theatrical debut. The marketing budget and reach were substantial. Warner Bros. reportedly spent more than $21 million on television advertising and promotional merchandise tie-ins. That television push generated an estimated 958 million impressions across networks, including NBC, ABC, TBS, CBS, and Sci-Fi, with much of that exposure timed around major sporting and entertainment events, such as the NCAA's March Madness basketball tournament, the 2022 Winter Olympics, and regular season NBA games. Merchandising formed a significant part of the promotional push as well. Warner Bros. Consumer Products coordinated a wide range of tie-in products, including limited edition art prints from Mina Lima connected to the Harry Potter, the exhibition brand, a movie magic companion book published by Insight Editions, a Niffler figure with an accompanying collectible card from Wizarding World, casual clothing and t-shirts sold through Hot Topic, bags and accessories from Les Sportsac, plush versions of characters including the Niffler and Botruckle from Build-A-Bear Workshop, and character action figures produced by Funko Pop. Digital promotion was similarly extensive. Warner Bros. International YouTube channels collectively drew roughly 125.1 million views on the film's promotional material, with particularly strong engagement from audiences in Indonesia, Brazil, Ireland, the United Kingdom, and Spain, among other markets. The studio also noted a notably strong viral reposting rate of about 18 shares for every original post, an unusually high multiplier for studio marketing content of that period. Theatrical release Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore held its world premiere at the Royal Festival Hall in London on March 29, 2022. From there, the international theatrical rollout unfolded in stages across a several-week window. Belgium and the Netherlands were the first markets to receive the film in cinemas, opening on April 6, 2022. A wave of other European countries followed, along with Australia, China, and Japan, all opening by April 8. The United States and Argentina followed on April 15, then the Philippines on April 16. A final cluster of Middle Eastern markets, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Lebanon, received the film somewhat later on April 28, 2022. The film's path to release was not a straight line, and its final date reflected several rounds of rescheduling. It had originally been targeted for November 12, 2021. Following the fallout from Depp's departure, the subsequent recasting process with Mikkelsen, and the broader disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Warner Brothers pushed the release back to July 15, 2022. That date was later moved up again. In September 2021, the studio brought the release forward by 3 months to April 15, 2022, which, aside from a slightly earlier opening in the United Kingdom and Ireland on April 8, became the release pattern that ultimately held for most of the world. One aspect of the theatrical release drew particular attention in the press. The Secrets of Dumbledore became the first Wizarding World film to directly and openly acknowledge Albus Dumbledore's sexuality on screen, portraying him and Grindelwald as having once been romantically involved. This was notable, given that although Rowling had publicly stated as far back as 2007 that she considered Dumbledore to be gay, none of the original novels had ever addressed this aspect of the character directly. The subject proved sensitive enough that the 2 lines of dialogue in the film that referenced Dumbledore's sexuality were edited out for the film's theatrical release in China, a decision that drew coverage and criticism from entertainment press at the time. Home media Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore became available for digital download on May 30, 2022, roughly 6 weeks after its theatrical debut. Physical media followed about a month later, with the film releasing on Ultra HD Blu-ray, Standard Blu-ray, and DVD on June 28, 2022. The film also had a notable life on streaming. It became available on HBO Max on the same day as its digital download release, May 30, 2022. Over its first full month of availability on that platform, the film was reportedly streamed in an estimated 8 million households, giving it a substantial afterlife on streaming, even as its theatrical run wound down. Reception box Office Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore grossed $95.9 million in the United States and Canada, combined with $311. $3 million from other international territories, for a worldwide total of approximately $407.2 million, while a substantial sum in absolute terms. This figure made the film the lowest grossing entry in the entire Wizarding World franchise, a notable decline for a series built on one of the most valuable properties in modern popular fiction. In North America, specifically, pre release tracking projected an opening weekend in the range of roughly $40 million dollars from about 4,200 theaters. The film's opening day brought in $20 million, dollars, which included $6 million dollars from Thursday night preview screenings. It went on to open to $42.2 million dollars for its full first weekend domestically. While that was enough to top the box office chart for the weekend, it also represented the lowest opening weekend total of any film in the Wizarding World franchise to that point. Demographic breakdowns of the opening weekend audience showed women over the age of 25 as the largest segment at 38%, followed by men over 25 at 33%. The film's second domestic weekend saw a steep decline, dropping 67% to a gross of $14 million dollars and falling to third place at the box office behind both Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and The Bad Guys. That 67% second weekend drop was the second worst in the history of the Wizarding World franchise, trailing only the 72% drop experienced by Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 back in 2011. Internationally, the film performed somewhat more strongly relative to expectations, though it still fell short of prior franchise entries. It opened to $56.9 million dollars across 22 international markets in its first weekend abroad. Germany proved to be a particular bright spot with a $9.2 million dollars opening that represented Warner Bros.' best debut in that market since Joker had opened there in 2019. The film's second international weekend brought in $71. 7 million, a tally that included openings of $7.1 million, each in France and Mexico. The Mexican debut standing out as the second biggest opening Warner Brothers had recorded in that market during the pandemic era. The film crossed the $200 million worldwide mark by its third international weekend and passed $300 million globally by its fourth critical reaction to Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore was mixed overall, an improvement in some critics' eyes over its predecessor, but still a step down from the reception enjoyed by the earliest Wizarding World films. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film held an approval rating of 46% based on 248 reviews, with an average score of 5.4 out of 10. The site's consensus summary suggested that the film sidestepped some of the narrative problems that had weighed down the previous installment while still falling short of recapturing the sense of wonder that had originally drawn audiences into the Wizarding World many films earlier. Metacritic's aggregate score told a similar story. The site assigned the film a weighted average of 47 out of 100 based on 49 critic reviews, a score the site classified as indicating mixed or average reviews. That figure also marked the lowest Metacritic score recorded for any film in the Wizarding World franchise up to that point, underlining a broader pattern of declining critical enthusiasm across the later entries in the series. Audience reaction, as measured through independent polling services, painted a somewhat more favorable but still lukewarm picture. CinemaScore polling gave the film an average grade of B plus on the service's A plus to F scale, a score tied with The Crimes of Grindelwald for the lowest audience grade recorded anywhere in the franchise. Separately, post-track exit polling was comparatively more positive, with 81% of surveyed audience members giving the film a positive score and 63% saying they would definitely recommend it to others amid the broadly mixed critical consensus. One specific element of the film drew consistent and pointed praise: Mads Mikkelsen's performance as Grindelwald. A number of reviews singled out his work as an improvement over Johnny Depp's portrayal of the same character in the earlier films, with some critics going so far as to suggest that Mikkelsen should have been cast in the role from the very beginning of the franchise. This became one of the more consistent threads running through the film's critical coverage, standing out against an otherwise divided response to the film as a whole. Reviews number 1, Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore review. Mads Mikkelsen goes dark. J.K. Rowling goes deep in emotional middle chapter. Replacing Johnny Depp as the villainous Grindelwald, the Hannibal star fleshes out J.K. Rowling's anti-fascist message in this vastly improved sequel by Peter DeBruge. Peter DeBruge, chief film critic, latest Mouse review. A touching bond forms between a North Little Rock teen and her late friend's mom 6 months ago. More than just a restoration, Mysterious Skin gets a full blown rejuvenation, which allowed Greg Araki to perfect the queer classic 6 months ago. Wuthering Heights review. Intense as her two leads, chemistry may be, Emerald Fennell knows to leave them wanting more 6 months ago. Remember way back in the year 2000, before even the first Harry Potter movie had been released, big as a cinder block and nearly as heavy, the fourth novel in JK. Rowling's best-selling YA series inspired fans to line up at bookstores around the country days in advance. At 734 pages, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was a monster, the biggest book many young fans had ever contemplated reading. Getting through it took effort, albeit the kind that brought deep and immediate rewards to those bewitched by the parallel reality Rowling had invented, one where wizards existed alongside the rest of us unfortunate non magic folk. Related stories. FIFA World Cup Final 2026 live stream. Here's where to watch the Spain versus Argentina online. Well, here we are, three movies into Rowling's convoluted big screen prequel saga, and the series once again feels like work, only this time the resulting pleasures will strike audiences quite differently, depending on your level of dedication to the franchise. Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore is rooted deep in the mythology of Rowling's wizarding world, seldom slowing down long enough to explain the magic spells or strategies used by its characters. That'll no doubt vex casual viewers, keeping them at wand's length from the interpersonal relationships that make this grand fight for the planet worth watching. But devotees will likely adore the revelations in store, including a deeper commitment to the tragic love story between beloved Hogwarts headmaster Albus Dumbledore, Jude Law, and the wizard determined to settle a score with Muggle kind. Popular on Variety. Johnny Depp is out, but his character Gellert Grindelwald has grown more powerful than ever. Now played by Mads Mikkelsen, without addressing the switch in a more grounded, less cartoonishly menacing vein, Grindelwald is determined to instigate a world war at roughly the same time that a certain Nazi was elected Chancellor of Germany. The rise of fascism parallels are as unmistakable as the inspiration for the character's new haircut, which has gone from stark white sea anemone to a greasy Hitler style forelock. After doing so much to lend consistency and credibility to Rowling's vision over the course of four Harry Potter movies and one overwrought spin off, director David Yates hit an unexpected low with the second installment, The Crimes of Grindelwald, a busy, bewildering eyesore that seemed more interested showcasing all kinds of CG trickery than in telling an elegant and engaging story. While The Secrets of Dumbledore doesn't exactly embrace simplicity, the screenplay, no longer credited to Rowling alone, but co-written by stalwart Harry Potter adapter Steve Kloves, feels far more focused. Happily, the execution proves that much easier to follow. Unlike the Harry Potter movies, which put the fate of humankind in the hands of three boarding school bound kids, the Fantastic Beast cycle deals primarily with adult wizards in the wider early 20th century world. Early on, Yates took this opportunity to demonstrate what mature magic practitioners are capable of. Their ability surely ought to be spectacular, even if it was hard not to feel overwhelmed watching impossible things happen. As Rowling projected the full extent of her creativity on screen, however, she left little room for audiences to use their own imaginations, depriving us of the best thing about her books. We got constantly shape shifting characters and others who could step through walls or teleport across countries. Explosions all but destroyed entire cities, while defensive techniques protected certain wizards from being injured. There was even a spell that mass erased witnesses' minds, giving the filmmakers license to wreak whatever havoc they pleased, as misbehaving make believe animals ran amok, and a miserable and incredibly dangerous orphan named Credence caused trouble every time he lost his temper. He's played by Ezra Miller, an intense young actor whose off screen antics could get him booted from the sequel considering what happened to Deep, like a young Luke Skywalker, Credence found himself torn between the forces of good and evil while trying to research the mystery of his origins. The final twist of the crimes of Grindelwald concerned a baby bird that Credence had adopted, which abruptly transformed from a harmless looking hatchling to a full grown flaming phoenix, a creature known to come to the aid of Dumbledore clan members in times of need. 3 years later, The Secrets of Dumbledore finally reveals the nature of Credence's connection to this family, causing his allegiance to waver between Grindelwald and Albus. As it happens, those two competing leaders were once quite close. Gazing into the desire reflecting mirror of Erist in the last film, Dumbledore described himself and Grindelwald as being more than brothers, and flashed back to a memory of them forming a blood pact years earlier. Because of this connection, not unlike the one a violent attack will forge between Harry and Voldemort, neither Dumbledore nor Grindelwald can so much as think of hurting the other without jeopardizing his own life. Time and again, usually for the best, love overrides reason in these films. An enchanted pack protecting pendant complicates the showdown anyone can see coming. In order to stop Grindelwald's power grab, Dumbledore will have to rely on proxies, namely Newt Scamander, the endearingly awkward magizologist embodied by Eddie Redmayne in the first two Fantastic Beasts movies. Grindelwald is similarly blocked but has an advantage, using a rare and highly revered dragon deer creature called a Quillin to see the future. The character's brutal treatment of this noble and seemingly defenseless species is incredibly difficult to watch, even if the animal doesn't actually exist. Prophecies are nothing new to Rowling's storytelling, though here we get the added wrinkle that Grindelwald sees only snatches of what's to come and can therefore be outwitted by countersight, a tactic of doing deliberately misleading things to confuse him while keeping actual intentions secret until the last moment. This is an amusing, if preposterous, plan, and one that nevertheless earns points for originality. Three-fifths of the way through this series, ugly, ungainly enchantment overload is clearly the agreed upon aesthetic, as Rowling and Cloves again come up with a plot that's considerably more complicated than it needs to be. Take the task entrusted to Newt's lovelorn assistant, Bunty Brodaker, Victoria Yates, who commissions half a dozen identical copies of her boss's leather case so as to disguise which one contains the quillin during the climactic scene. It's not likely that this scheme would fool someone who can see the future. In fact, if anyone's confused by the elaborately choreographed ruse, it is us, the audience. That seems to be the key strategy of the Fantastic Beasts movies, which incidentally also serves what passes for magic in the real world. Distract the audience so they don't see the trick and are therefore fooled into believing things as they are presented. Somewhere along the way, however, this franchise stopped being fun. If the 8 Harry Potter films left us wanting to enroll in that same school, the Fantastic Beasts series makes everything seem oppressive and unpleasant. Teetering on the brink of a second World War, one that will presumably be narrowly avoided in the coming films, and which the non magical sphere stands little chance of winning if Grindelwald ever gets his way. Still, there's something to be said for the way Rowling's vision spans multiple movies, how each installment feels like binge watching the latest season of a prestige HBO series, an adult friendly PG-13 alternative to Game of Thrones. No other film series works in such intricate multiple installment arcs, planting details that will almost certainly pay off in forthcoming chapters. Building on what Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Rowling and Warner Bros. Radically expanded the way cinema could be used to tell serialized stories, and with Fantastic Beasts, they continue to innovate, potentially excluding all but the most faithful, rather than actively trying to convert newcomers to what, like Star Wars, has an almost religious hold on its followers. Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore review. Mads Mikkelsen goes dark, J.K. Rowling goes deep in emotional middle chapter. Reviewed at AMC Century City, Los Angeles, March 31, 2022. MPA rating PG-13, running time 142 min. Production UK US Warner Bros. Pictures, release, and presentation of a Heyday Films production. Producers David Heyman, J.K. Rowling, Steve Kloves, Lionel Wigram, Tim Lewis. Executive producers Neil Blair, Danny Cohen, Josh Berger, Courtney Valenti, Michael Sharp, crew director David Yates, screenplay J.K. Rowling and Steve Kloves, based on a screenplay by J.K. Rowling, camera George Richmond, editor Mark Day, music James Newton Howard, with Eddie Redmayne, Jude Law, Ezra Miller, Dan Fogler, Alison Sudol, William Nadilam, Callum Turner, Jessica Williams, Victoria Yates, Poppy Cobbitwetch, Fiona Glascott, Catherine Waterston, Maria Fernanda Candido, Richard Coyle, Oliver Masucci, Valerie Pachner, Alexander Kuznetsov, Mads Mikkelsen, more from Variety, NCIS, New York cast Jennifer Beal, Jacqueline Byers, Shane Harper, Devin Druid, NCIS, New York cast Jennifer Beal, Jacqueline Byers, Shane Harper, Devin Druid. NCIS brings back Michael Weatherly as Tony DiNozzo for season 24. NCIS brings back Michael Weatherly as Tony DiNozzo for season 24. Stephen Colbert's Late Show bows out with 9 Emmy nominations, its biggest haul ever. Stephen Colbert's Late Show bows out with 9 Emmy nominations, its biggest haul ever. Mark Harmon returning as Gibbs in NCIS. Origins Season 3 story arc. Mark Harmon returning as Gibbs in NCIS. Origins Season 3 story arc. More from our brands. Rolling Stone Drake appears on Karol G's new album. Let's look at his past Latin music collaborations. Drake appears on Karol G's new album. Let's look at his past Latin music collaborations. Rob Report, Road Test. Why the new Ferrari Amalfi Spider is the finest all-around prancing horse in production. Road Test. Why the new Ferrari Amalfi Spider is the finest all-around prancing horse in production. Spotico new corporate filing hints at LIV Golf's post-playoff strategy. New corporate filing hints at LIV Golf's post-playoff strategy. Number 2, Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore final trailer finds Jude Law joining the magical fight. After sitting on the sidelines during the last film, Albus Dumbledore is now showing us what he's capable of. Jude Law as Albus Dumbledore in Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore 2022. After sitting on the sidelines for the crimes of Grindelwald, Albus Dumbledore Jude Law is joining the magical fray in the third Fantastic Beasts movie, The Secrets of Dumbledore, out this Friday. Sure, he's still sending out other characters on various side quests that might get them killed, but at least he's stepping onto the battlefield alongside them for an adventure that spans the entire globe. The final trailer for the highly anticipated Wizarding World 3, Quell, just dropped online, and it holds the promise of epic duels between Albus and his long-lost brother Aurelius, formerly known as Credence Barebone, played by Ezra Miller, and even Gellert Grindelwald, Mads Mikkelsen, replacing Johnny Depp. Has Dumbledore perhaps figured out a way to break the blood pact that forbids him from attacking his current enemy and former lover? And of course, this wouldn't be a Fantastic Beast project without a few. What else? Fantastic Beasts. Beasts that scuttle, fly, and expand. It seems like magical zoologist Newt Scamander Eddie Redmayne is headed out into the unknown wilds to encounter the most dangerous beasties we've ever seen. Not only that, but the hero may also be hitting his lowest point in the series thus far. Will his older brother, Theseus Callum Turner, meet a nasty end just as the two siblings patch up their estranged relationship? To quote IndieWire's review of the sequel, the film's PG-13 rating for some fantasy action, violence is no joke. Watch the final trailer below. Check out the post on YouTube. What I love about this film particularly is Newt and Dumbledore's relationship. Redmayne admitted to the AU review. It's always been a master and apprentice type thing. Here, I wouldn't say they're level, but more an older brother, younger brother thing. There's a moment in this film where Newt sees a little vulnerability in Dumbledore and gives him counsel. And I love that Newt gets to give some sage advice. Jessica Williams, Eulalie Hicks, Dan Fogler, Catherine Waterston, Tina Goldstein, William Nadilam, Yusuf Kama, Victoria Yates, Bunty. Alison Sudol, Queenie Goldstein, Poppy Corbett-Twitch, Vinda Rosier, Richard Coyle, Aberford Dumbledore, Oliver Masucci, Anton Vogel, Maria Fernanda Candido, Vicencia Santos, Dave Wong, Liu Tao, and Alexander Kuznetsov, Helmut Kostar. J.K. Rowling decided to team up with veteran Harry Potter adapter Steve Kloves for the screenplay. David Yates returns to direct his 7th Wizarding World feature. Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore arrives in theaters everywhere this Friday, April 15. Be sure to check out SFY's Wizarding World Week Marathon, featuring all 8 Potter films and the first 2 Fantastic Beasts installments, which runs through the end of the week. Watch Harry Potter on Peacock. Harry Potter movies news, trailers, witchcraft, related stories, Sadie Sink reveals Jean Grey's MCU future after Spider-Man. Sadie Sink reveals Jean Grey's MCU future after Spider-Man. The things John Carpenter was not a fan of Spielberg's E.T. The things John Carpenter was not a fan of Spielberg's E.T. How small budget helped Pan's Labyrinth Pale Man scene. How small budget helped Pan's Labyrinth Pale Man scene. You won't believe how Christopher Nolan pulled off Odyssey's Hades scene. You won't believe how Christopher Nolan pulled off Odyssey's Hades scene. Why Steven Spielberg finished Jurassic Park from another continent. Why Steven Spielberg finished Jurassic Park from another continent. Will David Ayer's suicide cut ever be released? Will David Ayer's suicide cut ever be released? Why Spaceballs 2 isn't called The Search for More Money? Why Spaceballs 2 isn't called The Search for More Money? Spider-Man. Brand New Day hits 1 billion at box office. Spider-Man. Brand New Day hits 1 billion at box office. Ice Cream Man director reveals horror secrets. Exclusive. Ice Cream Man director reveals horror secrets. Exclusive. Tom Holland reveals the Spider-Man idea too gruesome for Brand New Day. Tom Holland reveals the Spider-Man idea too gruesome for Brand New Day. What's next for Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Brand New Day? What's next for Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Brand New Day? Sadie Sink Spider-Man, Brand New Day mystery character explained. Sadie Sink Spider-Man, Brand New Day mystery character explained. Trending videos. 2. 31 Gillian Anderson reacts to Ryan Coogler's Incredibly Unique, The X-Files reboot. Will she join in? Gillian Anderson reacts to Ryan Coogler's Incredibly Unique, The X-Files reboot. Will she join in? 521 The Arc After the Arc. The Director's Special. After the Arc, The Director's Special. 4946. The Arc After the Arc, Season 2, Episode 12. After the Arc, Season 2, Episode 12. 952 The Arc After Show, Season 2 Recap. The Arc After Show, Season 2 Recap. 216 was Sadie Sink's Spider-Man Brand New Day role, accidentally spoiled by musician Steve Lacy. Was Sadie Sink's Spider-Man Brand New Day role accidentally spoiled by musician Steve Lacy? 1. 35 Elliot Page reveals shocking behind-the-scenes fact about the Odyssey stunt doubles. Elliot Page reveals shocking behind-the-scenes fact about the Odyssey stunt doubles. 122 IT. Welcome to Derry Creator teases Bleak Season 2 plans. IT. Welcome to Derry Creator teases Bleak Season 2 plans. 554. Train to Busan director Yeon Sang-ho reveals if he wants to make another film in franchise. Train to Busan director Yeon Sang-ho reveals if he wants to make another film in franchise. 208 Dave Bautista could be new Kratos in God of War after Ryan Hurst's shocking exit. Dave Bautista could be new Kratos in God of War after Ryan Hurst's shocking exit. 137 Suicide Squad. Inside David Ayer's unreleased cut. Will it ever be released? Suicide Squad. Inside David Ayer's unreleased cut. Will it ever be released? 127 The Arc Milan Petrovic becomes sheriff. Milan Petrovic becomes sheriff. 157. What's next for Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Brand New Day? His future. Explained. What's next for Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Brand New Day? His future. Explained. Number 3 Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore 2022. Last updated April 11, 2026. Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore is the third film in the Fantastic Beasts series and a direct continuation of the Wizarding World saga created by J.K. Rowling. Released in 2022, the film shifts focus more clearly toward Albus Dumbledore, his past, and the growing threat of Gellert Grindelwald, while still expanding the magical lore established in previous films. Detailed summary: The Blood Pact and Dumbledore's limitation. The film opens by explaining one of the most important obstacles in the story. Dumbledore and Grindelwald cannot fight each other due to a magical blood pact they made in their youth. This pact physically prevents either wizard from harming the other, forcing Dumbledore to act indirectly. This revelation reframes the entire conflict and explains why Dumbledore relies on others rather than confronting Grindelwald himself. Grindelwald's political rise. Grindelwald is revealed to be pursuing power not only through magic, but through wizarding politics. He aims to become the supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, using fear of muggles and selective visions of the future to justify his ideology. This is a critical shift. Grindelwald is no longer just a dark wizard, but a charismatic extremist leader. The Cullen and the election plot. A magical creature called the Cullen, known for its ability to see purity of heart and bow to true leaders, becomes central to the plot. Grindelwald murders a baby Cullen and reanimates it using dark magic, planning to manipulate the upcoming wizarding election. Dumbledore assembles a deliberately confusing and divided team, including Newt Scamander, Theseus Scamander, Lally Hicks, Bunty, Yusuf Kama, and Jacob Kowalski. The chaos is intentional, designed to prevent Grindelwald from reading their plans. Credence's true identity. Credence Barebone is revealed to be Aurelius Dumbledore, Aberforth Dumbledore's son. His obscurial condition is killing him, and Grindelwald has been using him as a weapon against Albus. This revelation adds emotional depth to Dumbledore's guilt and explains his personal investment in stopping Grindelwald without destroying Credence. Newt, Jacob, and the power of choice. Jacob Kowalski, the only muggle in the group, is given a wand not because he can use magic, but because belief and courage matter. His role emphasizes one of the film's recurring themes. Morality is not defined by magical ability. West Side Story, 1961, 300, 2006. Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, 2018. Movie ending. The final act takes place during the wizarding election in Bhutan. Grindelwald successfully frames himself as a legitimate candidate and uses the resurrected Kilin to appear pure of heart. The creature bows to him, seemingly confirming his worthiness and pushing the wizarding world dangerously close to accepting him as their leader. However, this moment is exposed as a lie. Bunty reveals the real Kilin, which bows not to Grindelwald or Dumbledore, but to Albus Dumbledore himself. Dumbledore humbly refuses the position, proving that true leadership is not about seeking power. The blood pact between Dumbledore and Grindelwald is unintentionally destroyed during a confrontation involving Credence. This moment is subtle but crucial. The pact breaks not through violence, but through emotional resolution and shifting loyalty. Credence reconciles with Aberforth and chooses life over hatred, weakening Grindelwald's hold over him. Grindelwald is publicly exposed, politically defeated, and forced to flee, marking the beginning of his downfall that will eventually lead to his imprisonment. Decades later, the film ends quietly. Dumbledore watches Newt, Jacob, and Queenie celebrate Jacob and Queenie's wedding from afar. He chooses solitude, fully accepting the burden of what is yet to come. This ending deliberately avoids a large scale battle, focusing instead on truth, choice, and moral victory, setting the stage for the future conflict hinted at in the Harry Potter timeline. Are there post credit scenes? No. Fantastic Beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore does not include any mid credits or post credit scenes. The story ends definitively with its final moments. Type of movie. This is a fantasy adventure film with strong political and dramatic elements, blending magical spectacle with themes of power, manipulation, and moral responsibility. Compared to earlier entries, it leans more toward character driven drama than pure adventure. Cast Eddie Redmayne, Newt Scamander, Jude Law, Albus Dumbledore, Mads Mikkelsen, Gellert Grindelwald, Ezra Miller, Credence Barebone, Aurelius Dumbledore, Dan Fogler, Jacob Kowalski, Alison Sudol, Queenie Goldstein, Catherine Waterston, Tina Goldstein, Callum Turner, Theseus Commander, Jessica Williams, Professor Lally Hicks. Film music and composer. The score was composed by James Newton Howard, continuing his work from the previous Fantastic Beasts films. The music is more restrained and melancholic this time, reflecting Dumbledore's internal conflict and the looming threat of war rather than constant wonder. The Young Girls of Rochefort, 1967. The Prince of Egypt, 1998. Troy, 2004 filming locations. United Kingdom, studio filming and exterior wizarding environments. Germany, Berlin scenes representing wizarding political centers. Bhutan, inspiration for the election setting, symbolizing neutrality and spiritual authority. These locations emphasize the film's global scope and the idea that the wizarding world's future affects everyone. Awards and nominations. The film received several technical nominations, particularly for visual effects and production design, but did not achieve major award success. Reception was mixed, with praise for performances and visuals and criticism for pacing and narrative density. Behind the scenes insights. Mads Mikkelsen replaced Johnny Depp as Grindelwald, bringing a colder and more restrained interpretation of the character. The script was rewritten after the crimes of Grindelwald due to audience feedback about complexity. Jude Law worked closely with the original Harry Potter films to align his Dumbledore with Richard Harris and Michael Gambon's portrayals. Several scenes involving Tina Goldstein were reduced due to scheduling conflicts. Inspirations and references. The film draws heavily from Wizarding World history, particularly themes introduced in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Grindelwald's ideology mirrors real-world authoritarian movements, making the story more grounded and political. Alternate endings and deleted scene. No alternate ending has been officially released. However, deleted scenes reportedly included. Additional interactions between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. More background on the wizarding election process. These were removed to reduce runtime and simplify the narrative. Book adaptations and differences. Unlike Harry Potter, this film is not adapted from a novel. It is an original screenplay set within the wizarding world. As a result, its canon is defined entirely by the films rather than books, giving it more flexibility but also less narrative clarity. Gladiator 2000, Underground 1995, Raging Bull 1980. Memorable scenes and quotes, key scenes. The blood pact explanation between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, the Killin bowing to Dumbledore, Credence meeting Aberforth, Jacob confronting Grindelwald despite being a muggle, iconic quotes. The world as we know it is coming undone. Dumbledore. Even if we disagree, you still matter. Newt Scamander. Who will love you now? Grindelwald. Easter eggs and hidden details. Dumbledore's wardrobe subtly mirrors his future Hogwarts style. The Bhutan setting foreshadows the peaceful ideology Dumbledore ultimately represents. Musical motifs from the original Harry Potter films appear during emotional scenes trivia. This is the first Wizarding World film not written solely by J.K. Rowling. It features the fewest magical creature showcases in the Fantastic Beasts series. The film deliberately avoids showing Grindelwald's full defeat to align with established canon. Why watch? If you care about Dumbledore's past, the moral complexity of power, and the slow burning rise of one of fantasy's most dangerous villains, this film offers important lore and emotional depth, even if it sacrifices some spectacle. Director's other works: Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, 2005, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, 2007.